So I said I'd do another vlog. I didn't say that to anybody in particular, but I told myself I would do another vlog because I wanted to kind of explain where my head is right now and kind of what my plan is for the next few years. If you're kind of observing from the outside, it probably looks like I just went, started trading and did a trip, and then just now I'm just going across the world. Uh, but it's actually been something that I've been thinking and plotting out very carefully for the past few months. Um, so here goes. I'm going to go apply for Act 22 in Puerto Rico, which is an act that allows you to pay 0% taxes on capital gains. Uh, now, I guess the real trick is that you have to become a bona fide resident of the island, which means you have to sell all your things in the U.S. You can't live in the U.S. for most of the year. You're going to have to live on the island. You have to spend 6 months at least the first year, 183 days. You have to rent a place year round, and you have to give $5,000 a year to a charity. But if you do all that, you are rewarded with 0% capital gains tax until 2035, as long as you submit an application and are accepted. So I found out about all this because I was researching, like, well, you know, eh, if you trade and you get capital gains and they're short term, which is everything I make is short term capital gains, uh, it's it's pretty ridiculous. 40% tax is the top rate. You get there pretty quick. So even when I was working engineering, like I was making decent money and I was only paying 23% or so tax. But 40% on the dollar makes you want to not make any more that way, right? Like you're just like, what are you doing? Um, so I started looking at, like, well, what would I have to do to get out of paying some of this, right? Like, hey, is there any tax havens offshore, whatever? Um, and I was looking at options that pretty much required you to expatriate, and that wasn't really an option for me. Not something, money's great, but it's not everything. I want to be able to come back and visit my family. I do want to be able to, if something happens, I want to be able to visit. I don't want to have my visa get, you know, overstay my visa trying to visit family that's sick or whatever. So I had no, I guess, reason to go for any of that. I was not really interested. Um, but then I found out about Act 22. Um, I had been looking at, I guess, traveling some at the end of the year. I wanted to go out of the country. I'd never been out of the country. Uh, and I was looking at, well, would I keep a place in Denver? It's like, it's expensive to live in Denver, right? Like my rent and bills were almost $1,800 a month. And it's not cheap at all. And it's something I wouldn't have been able to afford before. That's why I never moved to Denver before, right? Like, it would have taken a pretty good salary to make up the cost of living difference between there and New Orleans. But what I ended up looking at was like, well, why not just go to Puerto Rico? There's an act there, and you can get 0% capital gains tax. You have to sell everything that's on the mainland, right? Like you can't keep a place, you can't rent a place long term on the mainland. You can't just live 6 months in one, 6 months in the other. Like you're not supposed to have a place available to you in the mainland. Like if you come visit, you're supposed to rent or I guess stay with friends or whatever. Uh, but regardless, like as long as you keep a place full time in Puerto Rico, you're a bona fide resident, that's where all those requirements come in, right? Like you can't spend too much time in the U.S. You have to actually be a resident of the island. But when you go international, it's a lot more flexible, right? Like all those regulations are structured to, I guess, make sure that people aren't living in the U.S. and claiming a territory for tax benefits. Well, as long as you're not living in the U.S., you live in Puerto Rico, you have a place in Puerto Rico year round, you can travel pretty much. The first year you have to spend 6 months, and that's not a big deal, whatever. But every year after that, it's like 60 days minimum. You have to spend a little more than that, I think, but like it's basically a couple months, 2 to 3 months on the island, and then less than 3 months in the U.S. As long as you spend less than 3 months in the U.S. and you don't make earned income in the U.S., which is big. I make all my money now with capital gains. It's just trading. So that's easy for me. Um, then you pretty much all your biggest requirement is that you can't spend any more time in another country than you do Puerto Rico. So you can't go just stay in Thailand or Bali or somewhere cheap for, you know, 6, 7 months out of the year. But you can go hop from country to country and travel as long as you aren't putting down roots there, as long as you don't have any closer connection to any other country than you do Puerto Rico. And by being a bona fide resident, you're establishing that you don't have any closer connection with the U.S. than Puerto Rico. If Puerto Rico is the closest thing to home that you have, you travel, you don't make earned income in the U.S., it's very flexible. And so I just decided to kind of go for it. I was looking at traveling at the end of the year. It was going to be very expensive, you know, paying for a place in Denver and then also traveling. It was going to be prohibitively expensive. I mean, I could have swung it, but I probably wouldn't have done it. I probably would have picked a couple places to go, spend a month or so, and then come back. Right? It just doesn't make sense economically to keep a place there and do as much traveling as I want to do. And when I found out about this act, I just pretty much kind of put it all together and realized that I pretty much have an opportunity, if I can continue being successful with what I'm doing, to live a digital nomad lifestyle, like uh, travel the world. Uh, as long as you don't have any closer connection to any other place than Puerto Rico, it's, you're tax free until 2035, which is when the act ends. Um, and you're also flexible. You can travel the world on a U.S. visa. You can uh, the dogs. Uh, you can travel the world on a U.S. visa. You can come back home anytime. Like I can forfeit the tax benefits and just right back to move right back to the U.S. Right? If my family gets sick or whatever, I can be designated a caregiver and spend as much time in the U.S. as I need to and still be tax exempt. It's very flexible for somebody who, you know, doesn't have a spouse or kids on the mainland. As long as it's parents and other family, it's just not a big deal. You keep all your bank accounts there. You don't rent a place in the U.S. You're gonna have to sell all your possessions, your cars. I just bought a Subaru WRX STI, damn expensive car. I'm gonna have to sell it. Matt's driving it until November because I don't have to sell it till December. But I mean, you know, it's a sacrifice to make. But yeah, I'm pretty much kind of like, this is where I was kind of going uh, with this whole thing, is just to kind of lay out like what I'm trying to set up for myself. And you know, I guess it's, yeah, posting this video, the whole point is like to kind of let people know what's going on, and also just to share it because it's fucking awesome. And like, if anybody else is, you know, doing trading or wants to try to live this dream, like Act 22 in Puerto Rico, it's pretty fucking awesome for U.S. residents. And if you have the type of business where you sell services, you can relocate easily, and just you're still making earned income. But I guess if you can transfer that into a contractual relationship, you can use Act 20 and get 4% corporate tax on everything too. So they're pretty aggressively marketing to individual investors and people who who provide services in a way where they can relocate to the island, to try to incentivize them to do that with low taxes. So it's pretty great. I have mixed feelings about the whole thing, to be honest. I mean, you know, 0% tax is pretty much nothing. But you know, I have my issues with not paying and not contributing. But at the same time, look, this island, this is a completely legal thing. They feel it's to their advantage to market to people who are individual investors who make capital gains, to bring them to the island. And because of that, they're willing to offer me this tax break. I think I'd be stupid not to take it. So that's what I'm kind of planning on doing. So this whole moving to Puerto Rico thing, traveling the world, you know, maybe from the outside it might look a little unstructured. Just, oh, what's he doing? Just kind of going crazy. He's doing all this stuff. Like, what's the reason? Well, the reason is that I'm going to go move there for taxes. You know, this end of this year, So just to explain kind of this year, if I had moved in the middle of the year, because I didn't find out about all this until after the new year, and if I had moved before January 1st of next year, I would have had to meet more stringent, um, more stringent requirements for residency for the next 3 years. It would have been 6 months on the island for 3 years, basically combined. It's like a little. They give you a little wiggle room, but basically you got to spend a year and a half over the next 3 years on the island. Well, if you don't split a year, you have to spend 183 days, 6 months, the first year only, and then there's a less restrictive test that you can meet, which is making less than 3,000 of earned income in the U.S. and spending less than 90 days in the U.S. Well, now that I'm not, now that I'm not living there, I don't have a lease in the U.S. anymore. Well, it's visiting family. Well, when I was living in New Orleans and had a full-time job, I was spending at most like a week and a half in Mississippi visiting my family. I spent that much just before I left. So, I'm not, being in the U.S. for less than 90 days is really not a big deal. I'm actually going to be able to visit my family and friends a lot more. I apologize to anybody I didn't stop by and see when I was in Vicksburg a few days ago. It just is what it is, I'm, I was enjoying the downtime and enjoying the time with my family before I go spend a few months out of the country. Anyway, so yeah, that's kind of where I was going with all this, was to explain, where I was going this year. Well, if I'm paying 40 cents on the dollar for this year, right? Now until the end of December is still under this year, I'm paying 40 cents on the dollar on any dollar that I make. And I was budgeting everything out and realizing that, well, why keep a place? Why do all this stuff? I can basically live in Southeast Asia for what it would cost for just my rent. I can get a hostel. I can go sit on the beach and drink Mai Tais and get massages every day for as much as I was getting, paying in rent in Denver. So it just seemed like a pretty easy decision to just say fuck it and go fuck off overseas for a few months and wait till December. I have to be back in Vicksburg for my Thanksgiving. It's when I see all my dad's side of the family, and yeah, so I'll be going back for November, getting a place in Puerto Rico then, and I will be in Puerto Rico from probably the first 6 months of the year. Probably just go ahead and get my 183 days contiguous and plan another trip for next year. So, and it's almost a year since I quit my job. I got to go back and look at the exact date. I think it's the 22nd, but yeah, we're almost at a year from quitting my job. It's just been an amazing year, and yeah, regardless of all the other bullshit nonsense, that's all in the past, and that's frankly other people's problem, not mine, because I'm living my best life, and whatever. So that's it for this vlog. I'm in Bali. I will be posting more. I'm gonna go get a chest plate for my GoPro and probably hop on one of these little motorcycles, and gonna take you guys on a ride through Denpasar and maybe up to Mount Agung in the next few days. Other than that, I'm getting over jet lag. Need more coffee. It's the second time doing this video because I kind of rambled too much the first time, and I probably rambled too much this time. So hopefully y'all be looking forward to the next video. Enjoy. Cheers. Love y'all. Go live your best life, and don't forget to stop and enjoy the ride.